Okay, finance. I've got to get really close to my screen because I have it split again. I don't dare mess it up. So I'll follow along here with this really fine print.
Are you ready for me, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair Belknap.
On 15.4 Capstone revolving loan, the committee moves that the board direct USBE staff to follow the policies and procedures of state finance to effectively write off the remaining balance owed by Capstone Classic Academy Charter on its revolving loan.
Okay, and I'm not seeing how you state it on here, but I think I can restate it by jumping because it's not on
the motion up.
Beg your pardon?
I'm just asking if somebody would put the motion up for you. It's going to be under summary. There it is.
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to see if I can not lose my screen here. Okay, the motion before the board is that the board direct USBE staff to follow the policies and procedures of state finance to effectively write off the remaining balance owed by Capstone Classic Academy Charter on its revolving loan. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Lear.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe it's for Scott Jones.
Okay, ask your question.
I'm just wondering. Okay, I'm wondering why, if this is typical, and if a district, the first part, is it typical? Second part, has a district ever done this? I know they don't get revolving loans in the same sense, but I think there is another. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a loan opportunity for school districts, and I just feel like what is the reasoning in just letting this money go to waste or down the rat hole?
So, Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Scott Jones, operations. I wouldn't say this is typical. I mean, we've had other charter schools that have closed. I think there were 2 others. It's in the backup documentation. There was additional information that Chair Huntsman also asked for along the lines of, what is the trend here and the balances. So you can.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. That's fine, ma'am. I'm glad you asked the question so we could point that out. So that, so this is the 3rd charter school that, we've, that's closed, right? And then had a revolving loan outstanding. What you're referring to with the districts is, and I might not have the title quite right, but it's the school building loan. And, as long as I've been here, there haven't been any defaults on that or any issues there. So did I answer both of your questions?
Yes, I'm sort of frustrated that and not at anybody other than Capstone, but no bank would do this, no government entity would typically do this. I just feel like it's unfortunate that money was essentially wasted, and I wish we had a better process. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then to add some clarity to that, on the district side that Superintendent Scott Jones talked about, I think the only challenge that we've ever had was an interest rate. But we've had discussions, and a lot of board members, unless you're in the finance committee, it was a discovery to me when I first joined the board, is I didn't know we were in the banking business, but we are in the banking business, and under 53F-9-203 charter school revolving account, our fingerprints are on that, and it was just like a bank. But the reality is with the interest paid back, there is something that happens in the banking business called bad debt, and even in that world there are some write-offs. But as a whole within that account, the account is still robust and functioning as designed. And I think that I recall my tenure here, I think we've only written off one other debt, but just for your information. Board Member Scott Hansen. That's a question or comment.
Yeah, I just wondered if there's anything left of Capstone. Have they been dissolved? Are there any assets? I don't see on the promissory note that there was any guarantor or anyone else that we could reach out to, but do we make any efforts in that regard before we're proposing to write this off?
So I can address that
Yes,
as well.
yeah.
To Board Member Hanson's question, my understanding is that there was a full liquidation, and that, we are at the point where there's no other assets or funding available for them to have paid this down or paid it off. The closure process is SCSB staff. I can double check with them, but essentially we're just down to the final closure of this school with no other assets available to help offset this loan.
Okay. Vice Chair Cummins.
Yeah, and I just, as we talk about this particular loan and try and compare it to district schools, there are some significant differences that are hard to compare apples to apples. We have never closed a district school before, and so that's unique to the accountability in the charter world that's different in district schools. And also this particular loan, if I remember correctly from a few years ago, it loans out at a slightly higher interest rate than what is loaned out to district schools with that building loan that Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones was talking about sooner, because of the higher risk that is involved in loaning to schools that have the potential of closing within the window that they still owe this money back. And I would say the biggest risk is held by the account itself, because anything that these charter schools don't pay back, it's not credited back into that loan account balance, and so the people who suffer from it are future charter schools who don't have that additional money available for them to borrow from at that rate. And so I just say that comparing it to district schools is different, because it's a little bit different consideration as we think about the accountability that we have to charter schools and the ability to close them down, which we don't do for district schools.
Okay. Board Member Lear. Your hand's still raised.
Yeah, sorry to speak twice.
Okay.
But I think this might be instructive for us, and I understand what Brittany's saying. But I also do recall one time, maybe 15 years ago, when the USB was contemplating an action against a school district, and that school district was able to pull itself out of this situation. So I think are some similarities, but I would like to ask Deputy Superintendent Jones, just as in terms of lessons learned, is there something we could have done to have, and again, no, without blame, is there something we could do in the future to be more vigilant so that we don't just in 5 minutes blink and give away $330,000? I feel especially bad that it couldn't go to charter schools in need. Are there obvious things we should have done, the board should have done, or someone should have done?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Scott.
In the case of Capstone, I'm not sure if there's anything that we could have done better other than, potentially, I mean, at the end of this, it really became an enrollment issue, right? That the projected enrollment didn't come in, to what they had anticipated or projected it would. So therefore, not having the enrollment counts, it was, just a matter of time, so to speak, before, there wasn't enough revenue to sustain the operations. And then, providing this funding, is an integral part of opening up. So, I think we could all pay, more attention to, just how well, or in the beginning, it seems like the first 3 years of the operations of the charter school are absolutely critical. And, meeting the enrollment targets and ensuring that the revenue estimates that were made is, and predicted or displayed as part of the overall application process to open up the school. That's the essential piece there is, perhaps a more concrete upfront review of, especially where there might be cases where, a charter school's opening up in a particular area that might be saturated by other schools or, things like that. I'm certainly could, I'm sure improve or do better on that. So, but nothing glaring, nothing really that, if we had have done this, it would have meant that they would have not defaulted on this loan if we would have done that. There's nothing like that. It's just one of those situations where perhaps the analysis or, a deeper or taking a lot more time early on in the process of their application to identify, hey, they likely won't meet these enrollment counts or, things like that might have helped with this. But overall, there's not any one specific thing I think that any of us could say that led to this.
Thanks, Scott. Just if I may, Chair, just one more brief 2-sentence comment, and that is that, as I've said before, I believe in treating the money that the board has responsibility for as if it were my own. And if it were my own $330,000, I certainly wouldn't just say, oh, well, I guess this one missed the boat. And I feel frustrated with that. And I, at myself as a board member, at the circumstances that it's just gone. And so I just have to say, I'm really troubled that happens. And I would feel just as pained as if it were happening to me. And I would not let that happen again. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, can you speak to the loan itself and how it was set up by the legislature and how it was supposed to sustain itself through good and bad times, and of right now when everyone pays back the loans, the account grows. When they can't, it shrinks. Can you speak to that just so the board knows that this is a part of a process that we didn't go get the money. It was earmarked a certain way, but we are partial stewards. When I say partial, we are partial stewards. Can you speak to that, Deputy Superintendent Jones, to help everyone to understand the context of this particular loan or this particular fund?
Right. So it is a revolving loan, which implies that, we make these loans go out, and the fund grows or is basically reinstituted by way of the payments that are made by the other, by the recipients of the loan. There's promissory notes are provided, and we do a great, staff do a really good job with the State Charter School Board staff, and our staff do a really good job of ensuring that when the time comes for consideration of these loans, that we see the amortization schedule or the schedule that's necessary to pretty much keep the amount of funding that has been deemed and have been appropriated or necessary to reconstitute this fund. So back to Vice Chair Cummins' point, the interest rate is 2%, typically is 2%. I'm not sure it's varied from that since I've been here, but that's what we've set. And then we're also considerate of and back to Board Member Lear's point, what's the trend here? Well, if this is the only third charter school, there's multiple charter schools that have benefited from this source of revenue, if you will, or this revolving loan. So we could also show the benefits of it. And, it is always, I agree with Board Member Lear, it's always unfortunate to see or to experience, situations where there's a closure and then, this balance has to be written off, or that, that's money that won't return. But I mean, the gist of it is that the fund is dependent on the ability of whomever, whichever schools receive the funds to pay those back in a timely manner. So I think that's what you're getting at, Chair Huntsman, is that it needs to keep, revolving and ensuring that, as we open more charter schools and other charter schools that have been recently opened have access to this funding. Because my understanding, and I can speak to this, that it has made a difference. It has made a difference to charter schools, in keeping open, and especially in those critical first 3 to 5 years of operation. So hopefully I answered your.
Thank you. Board Member Hanson?
There's more details in the backup. It's really detailed on the balances and things like that. We really broke that down for all the board members.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that this is an unsecured loan and it's set up that way by the legislature. And as long as we're in the business of making unsecured loans, we run a risk. If this was on the open market, that interest rate would be a lot higher. It would be like a credit card with higher interest because they plan on writing off, because they make a lot of unsecured loans to all of us when we charge things. But I don't know. I mean, we can check the plans of the charter schools and do our best due diligence, but in the end, there's no security to fall back on. And some of these are things, bad things are going to happen, unfortunately. I wish there was a better system, but I think with the structure that we have to work with, this is just part of the deal.
And I've been exactly where a lot of you are talking right now. And when I first discovered we were in the banking business many years ago, I think Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones was in the meeting when I'm going, we are really in the banking business then. But and so I'm not. We take it very seriously. But the upside to this is I talked to the legislature, just for your background, they did not want to get into the grant business. They said, okay, if you're going to do this, this is loan. So they added this as this layer of difficulty, and they're not keep funding it, and so it's operating the way that they designed it, and on our end, we're doing the best that we can with that in unsecured loans, but we went through transparency and everything else. This is part of that mechanism of when it goes south. So it's very unfortunate. Scott Hanson, your hand's still up, or is that from before? I didn't notice. Sorry. Oh, I'm not seeing any of their hands. The motion before the board is that the board direct USBE staff to follow the policies and procedures of state finance to effectively write off the remaining balance owed by Capstone Classic Academy Charter on its revolving loan. That's a motion before the board. Board members, please vote. Board member Davis, I see your hand's up, but I didn't see it up when I was looking. Is that your vote?
It's okay. I'll just abstain. I had some questions. I'll abstain from the vote and get them answered later.
I apologize. I thought I saw it, and then I thought you put your hand down. I apologize.
No problem.
Are you going to vote on the motion, Board Member Davis?
No, I'll abstain and get my questions answered later.
Okay. The motion passes with one abstained, and that was Board Member Davis. Do you have that, Lorraine?
Yes.
Okay. Chair Lear, will you please continue? Or not Chair Lear, sorry, Chair Belknap. We're not.
Okay, if Carol wants to do finance, she
Let's
can.
finish finance first.
Struck fear in my heart.
That would be scary for me to do lawn licensing, so that's good. All right, we are on 15.5, a report on building renovations and requests for additional funds. This was actually very interesting, just so everyone knows that. For the motion for the board, the committee moves that the board approve using the remaining $46,215.35 balance in the board discretionary funds to continue the building renovations and modifications.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve using the remaining $46,215.35 balance in the board discretionary funds to continue building. We have in, was this really our motion, my motion? The renovations and modifications, but it says something different there. I'm like, oh, did I say that? So that's the motion before the board. Discussion to that motion. I'm seeing none. So please vote. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on 15.6, the board bylaws. The motion from the committee moves that the board approve bylaws sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, draft 3.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the committee moves that the board approve board bylaws sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, draft 3. Board Member Belknap? Or Chair
Yes,
Belknap?
I would like to make an amendment. I would like to amend this motion and have it returned to committee.
Okay, we have a proposed amendment, and that is to have this motion return, or this item returned to committee. Is there a second?
Second, Board Member Cannon.
Want a discussion to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's been some additional insights from staff and particularly from our AAGs and also our internal auditor as well, that I think that we need to review.
Thank you. Any other discussion to the motion? Seeing none, the motion before the board is to have this item.
Chair Huntsman, this is Board Member Earl.
Yeah, there you go. I see it now.
I got my hand up. Sorry,
Thank
I've got really bad lighting going on right now.
Oh.
Mike, is there a particular area that they're still looking at revising, Board Member Belknap? Or just a number of areas, or?
Chair Huntsman?
Yes, please respond.
We don't just have some grammatical errors, we also have some systematic errors that we need to fix. Our AAGs have weighed in.
Okay, I just wondered because it does, some of these may be relevant to voting next week, and I don't know whether that affects what happens then, or if it's not that big of a deal. Okay, thank you.
So the motion before the board is that the amended motion before the board is to have the board bylaws sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 go back to committee. All of those in favor, please vote. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Chair, point of privilege, please.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everybody who worked on the bylaws, but more than that, I want to thank those people who work in our committees and our staff, and particularly Scott Jones, who is ever relentless at making things right. And I appreciate his service, and the others, our IT director, our budget people. I could name all of them. I'm starting to name them, but I won't. So thank you very much. Thanks to your husband.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the finance report.